So you've done the physio exercises, you've rested, built back gradually, and even started doing strength training. And yet, every time you try and build back your training to the level that actually makes you feel like a competitive runner again, about week 4, week 5, week 6, something breaks down again. It's the same pattern, just a different month. But what if the problem isn't your effort? What if it's that nobody's ever shown you the complete system that actually fixes the root cause of these recurring injuries? So my name's Joe, I'm a physio, marathon runner, and Ironman finisher, and I work exclusively with competitive runners over 40 who are stuck in this exact loop. And in this video, I'm going to show you the complete 5-step system to get you from breaking down every 4 to 6 weeks to racing halves and marathons again. And it's called the Resilience Ladder. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which rung you're stuck on and what you need to do to climb all the way to the top. But before I show you the system, I need to make something clear. There's a big difference between running without pain and racing competitively. Running without pain is survival. It's getting around the block, ticking a box. Racing competitively is all about performance, chasing times, pushing pace, signing up for a half marathon or full marathon with complete confidence, instead of hoping that you're going to make it to the start line and just be happy that you get around. And if you're watching this, you're probably not looking for survival. You want to perform on race day. You want to be racing against your mates. You want to be placing in your age group. You want to still be pushing for PBs. That's what this system is built for. So why does your body keep letting you down just as your training volume starts to build and you feel like your race fitness is coming back? Well, it's because almost everything you've been told to do to try and address these injuries only works at the symptom level. It doesn't rebuild capacity. Rest gets you out of pain, but it doesn't make your tissues stronger. Sports massages reduce tension, but it doesn't help to build tissue tolerance. Basic physio sheet exercises activate some muscles, but they don't create the structural resilience you need for 12 to 16 weeks of progressive race training. So what happens? You get injured, you rest, you do some exercises, pain settles, you feel better, you start running again, and your body is in the exact same state it was before the injury. Nothing's been rebuilt, you've just been patched up. So week 5, when your volume starts to ramp, your body breaks down again. Same pattern, just a different month. That's why you need a system, not random exercises, not generic advice like you've got weak glutes or build back gently and see how you feel. You need a complete step-by-step framework built specifically for competitive runners over 40 who are stuck in the injury cycle. And it's called the Resilience Ladder. And here's why it works when everything else keeps failing. Most approaches treat injury like a light switch. You're either injured or you're not. But rebuilding your body isn't binary. It's a ladder. You can't just jump from injured to racing. You need steps, clear sequential steps that actually build on top of each other. That's what the 5 rungs are. So the first rung is all about controlling pain, and this is often the entry point. So if you're in the acute phase, you've had a flare-up, or you've got significant pain when you're trying to run, or when you can't feel like you can run at all, this is where you have to start. And the goal here is simple. Settle the acute phase so you can actually start rebuilding. This is where most people make their first mistake. They just try and rush this process. So the pain settles faster than you might have thought, and in the moment it does, most runners jump straight back into training. They skip everything that actually rebuilds tissue capacity. And that's why you end up sliding back down to rung 1 after just a few weeks of getting back into running. Rung 1 is not the finish line, it's just the starting point. So once you've controlled the pain, rung 2 is all about rebuilding your foundation. This is where you restore basic movement quality, joint mobility, and neuromuscular control, addressing the fundamental movement patterns that get disrupted when you're injured or running through pain. So think of it like this. If you've been limping around for a few weeks, your body's been compensating. Your mechanics have changed. Before you start loading the system again, you need to restore it. So rung 2 fixes that. But most physio programs end here. You get some basic activation exercises, some mobility work, and then they sign you off and say, no longer in pain, you're good to go. So rung 3 might just be the most important rung of the entire ladder, and it's where you actually start to rebuild your tissue capacity so you've got the load tolerance you need to be able to start training for halves and marathons again. So if you've watched my earlier videos, you'll know about the 2 fuel tanks. Your aerobic fitness, tank 1, recovers fast. Within just a few weeks of getting back into running consistently, you feel like your fitness levels are climbing fast, breathing feels controlled, and you feel like you're ready to start pushing yourself again. But your structural capacity, tank 2, your tendons, connective tissues, Essentially, the capacity of your tissues to absorb the load at running pace recovers much slower. It can sometimes be up to 8 to 12 weeks to see meaningful adaptation. And that gap, your fitness outpacing your structure, is why you break down just when you start to try and build the volume and intensity of your training back again. Rung 3 is where we close this gap. Because here's the thing, the strength work you're probably already doing isn't doing this enough. Glute bridges, clamshells, bodyweight squats, even standard gym routines, they'll be better than not doing anything at all, but they're often not designed to create the high force, high speed tissue tolerance you need when you're hitting 430km pace on the back end of a 10k. So what actually fills Tank 2 is proper progressive, personalized and periodized loading. So you need to make sure it's progressive, so the load increases systematically over time, not randomly. Personalized, based on your starting point, your injury history and your running goals. And also it needs to be periodized. This is something that so many runners skip. You need to have structured deload weeks built in because adaptation happens during recovery, not just during loading. And you also need to make sure that your strength work is properly periodized to where you are in your race season and your race calendar. So without hitting these 3 Ps, you can exercise as much as you want, but you'll still keep breaking down the moment the volume or intensity of your training starts to build. Proper Rung 3 work is non-negotiable. So Rung 4 is when you start running again properly, not a random return to running program, not I feel fine so I'm going to run 10k with my club. So a structured return to running plan is built around 3 key things. So number 1 is baseline testing. So before you start, we need to know what your body can actually handle, not what you think it can handle, not what you could do 2 years ago, what it can handle right now. So this tells us your starting point, your safe volume, your safe intensity, your safe pace. So number 2 is safe structured progression. So from that baseline volume and intensity, we need to increase it systematically, but not just based on how good you feel on that day, but based on a pre-planned progression that actually accounts for the adaptation and healing of the tissues that you've been aggravating. So you need built-in deloads. Every 3 to 4 weeks, you need to drop back the volume, not because something's gone wrong, but that's when adaptation actually consolidates. So running through every deload is one of the most common reasons runners break down just when they're starting to feel good. And ultimately, the running plans that most runners follow are actually built for healthy 30-year-olds with bulletproof bodies. They don't take into account your injury history, your tissue capacity, or your adaptation timelines. So Rung 4 is your running plan rebuilt for your body, not the average runner. And then climbing to Rung 5, this is why you started this. This is where you add race-specific work, tempo runs at race pace, interval sessions, long runs with your club mates where you're able to actually keep up with the pack, not dropping off. And you have the confidence to sign up for that next race you've been targeting for a while, not hoping to survive it, but actually chasing age group podiums, going after PBs, and pushing yourself again. That's Rung 5, and that's what happens when you rebuild for performance, not just pain management. So let me tell you about Michelle. She'd been struggling with recurring injuries for the past 18 months, calf injuries, knee flare-ups, plantar fasciitis. Every time she tried to build back, something broke down. She'd been and seen a local physio, she'd done the exercises, she'd tried being patient with her return, but she was still stuck. So when I assessed her online, the problems were clear. She was jumping straight back from pain control to running. She'd never rebuilt the structural foundation. Her Tank 2 was always empty when she started training again. So we put her on the resilience ladder properly. So Rung 1, control the pain and settle the flare-up tissues. Rung 2, we did 3 weeks of rebuilding movement quality and foundation. Rung 3, 10 weeks of progressive periodized strength work. 3 weeks heavy, 1 week deload. Repeat. Rung 4, structured return to running with a baseline test, a progression plan and built-in deloads. And then she climbed all the way to Rung 5. So as you can see here, she'd gone from struggling to run for 18 months back to doing 10 miles. Then just a few months later, she ran 18k. This is the furthest that she'd run since 2012. And then just a few months on from there, she was able to enter and race the Southend Half Marathon. She hadn't been able to do this for years because she'd been constantly stuck in that injury cycle and completely lacked the confidence to start pushing herself in training, so shied away from entering races. But because she climbed all the way up the resilience ladder without skipping any rungs, she'd rebuilt her foundation, filled up her Tank 2, and was able to start racing again and reclaim her identity as a competitive runner. So now you know the 5 rungs, you understand the system, but here's the problem. Knowing the system is not the same as knowing where you are in it, which rung you're actually on, what are your specific weak links, what's your real baseline right now, not what you hope it is, but what does the data actually show us? because most runners dramatically overestimate their structural capacity and underestimate how much damage accumulated niggles and stop-start training have done to their structural capacity over the years. They think they're on rung 3 when actually they're on rung 1 or rung 2. So they start rung 4 progression based on their old training data instead of their current baseline. And they miss their deloads because they feel fine, right up until about week 5 or week 6 when they break down again. But the real issue here is trying to figure all this out on your own. Self-assessment when you're inside the injury cycle is nearly impossible. You're too close to it. You're making decisions based on how you feel, not on objective data about your structural capacity. That's not a criticism, that's just the nature of being a person who's living in it. And ultimately, you've probably been around the houses, seen local physios or other healthcare professionals, getting the generic advice, here's some physio sheets, build back slowly, and it might work in the short term, but ultimately does nothing to rebuild your tissue capacity and get you back to running. Yes, going for a sports massage can feel nice in the moment. Yes, getting acupuncture can feel good, but ultimately does nothing to rebuild your tissue capacity. And if you've been trying to piece all of this on your own, following random YouTube workouts or trying to build your running plan without clear guidance and clear progression that's data-driven and backed by research, you're ultimately going to keep spinning your wheels. So that's why I want to offer you a free 30-minute running performance assessment. So these are designed for competitive runners over 40 who want clarity on exactly where they are on the resilience ladder and what they need to do to get back to racing again. So during this 30-minute call, we'll cover 3 key things. So where are you right now? We identify which rung you're stuck on, what your specific weak links are, and what the root cause of your breakdown pattern is. Not guesswork, but a structured assessment based on your injury history and your training data. Number 2, what does your roadmap look like? Based on where you are, I'll map out the specific progression you need, the exercises, the loading parameters, the running integration timeline, the deloads to get you from where you are now to back racing competitively again. And then number 3, we'll assess if this is the right fit for us to work together online. I'll tell you honestly whether working together actually makes sense, or if your situation is actually better suited to something else, in-person care or a different approach. I'll honestly just tell you. So this is definitely not going to be a pushy sales call. It is an assessment. And yes, this is done online, which I know might raise a question. Can you actually get a proper assessment online? From what we're doing, reviewing your injury history, assessing movement patterns through video, analysing your training data, the answer is a clear yes, completely. In fact, for this type of assessment, my experience is online often works much better than a standard 20 to 30 minute in-person appointment because we have more time and I can see you moving in your actual environment. And also, you're going to be working with someone who clearly understands running injuries and has dealt with the injury cycle themselves, instead of just seeing your local physio who may or may not understand what it takes to get back to running competitively again. So here's the thing I want you to think about. You've probably been in this cycle for a while, months, maybe even years. Every time you try and build back, you break down. Every time you start to feel like yourself again as a runner, something gives way. Ultimately, how many more months are you going to spend in that cycle? Because the cycle doesn't fix itself. The injury pattern doesn't resolve with time alone. And it's definitely not going to resolve. Just keep doing the same things you've been doing over and over again and expecting a different result. The injury cycle will only break when you address the root cause, when you rebuild your structural capacity properly, when your running plan is matched to your body's real capacity. So 6 months from now, you could be watching your mates post race results again that you know you're actually capable of, or you could be racing alongside them and actually beating them. That's what climbing the resilience ladder could actually give you. The link to book your free assessment is in the description below. Click it, book in a time, and I really look forward to getting to know you a little bit better, understanding why you've been stuck in this injury cycle, and ultimately helping you to climb the resilience ladder rung by rung so you can reclaim your performance and ultimately reclaim your identity as a runner.